Hello friends, it's Greg here again on the Blue Feather Ephemera channel, and I have an eBay store by the same name. Every week I make a video to show you what's sold in the store, and we've got some beautiful ads to talk about and a couple of interesting tidbits. We also cover a bonus topic every week, and this week we're going to follow up with part 2 of struggling with categories. We'll continue that discussion that we had last week on store categories within eBay. So stay tuned for that. And one more thing to look forward to, I've changed up the weekly recap screen just a little bit more based on a viewer suggestion. And so I'd ask you to watch to the end today so that I can get your feedback on that. Any kind of constructive criticism you want to leave in the comments would be appreciated. But right now, let's take a look at those ads. All right, we're starting them off with a bang today. This first ad is for Red Wing Shoes. They made a boot called an Irish Setter Sport Boot, and this comes from 1964. It ran in Argosy magazine. And with a little bit of close-up here, I just think that the little cartoon here is extra funny. These guys are walking through the desert, and he's telling his partner next time buy a pair of Red Wings because his feet hurt so bad he's walking on his hands. This artist here, I've seen it several places before, VIP, and I've included that in listing titles before. I've never researched it to see who it stands for, but I do see a lot of mid-century art with that artist signature, so that's interesting. $8.77 sent this to California. For car lovers like me, here's a good one. This is for Porsche. It says you can get Grand Prix performance wherever you drive. And this ran in Sports Illustrated 1957. This is only a partial page ad. We'll look at the measurements here. About 5 3/4 by a little over 5.5. And it just gives you some detail here about the handling qualities proven at Sebring, Le Mans, Targa Florio, and Mille Miglia. So when you drive a Porsche, it's race tested. And the U.S. distributor, Hoffman Porsche Car Corporation out of New York, ran this ad. And $10.77 sent it to a repeat customer in Indiana. Here's a nice ad from 1972, and it's for the Ireland Industrial Development Authority, and it says a plant in Ireland, more profit in the common market. When you read into the details here, like right over here, it's talking about the labor pool in Ireland. It says they have plenty of workers and skilled technicians and managers to run your plant. They speak your language and so on. It says it positions you to earn a higher profit margin when you do business in the common market. And so that's pretty interesting there. I did want to show this here. It does have a condition issue, a small edge tear right there, probably about a ½ inch on the left-hand side of the page. I showed a detailed picture of it, and I also disclosed it in remarks. We'll go down and I'll show you what I mean there. In the item description, a condition note, there's a small tear on the left edge, about a ½ inch. Please see the photos. The buyer was okay with that. I priced it down because of that at $12.77. It ran in Fortune magazine, and it's on its way to Illinois. This is my first World War II era ad of the week, and this ran in the Quartermaster Review 1944. The company is Pepsodent Toothbrush, and they're advertising their 50 tuft brush, and it says this is a special U.S. service price, and that's because typically that same toothbrush costs 50 cents, but they've got it marked down half price to show their appreciation for American servicemen. Bob Hope is the celebrity endorsement here, and I sold this for $14.77. It's a half-page ad, and it's on its way to South Carolina. Now, here's an interesting ad that ran in the Woman's Home Companion 1936, and it features a lady named Mrs. Ernest DuPont of Wilmington, Delaware, and she is a part of the DuPont Chemical Corporation family. And in this picture here, she's the lady there, photographed recently at the Rainbow Room on the 65th floor of Rockefeller Center in New York. And it says, well, this is in her own words. In her own words, she says, I always enjoy camels all through the day and during meals especially. They never seem heavy and I like their flavor tremendously. They make the whole meal so much pleasanter. And so down at the bottom of the page, it says, among the many distinguished women who prefer Camel's costlier tobaccos are, and then it's got a who's who posh jet setting list of the creme de la creme of society there. And that's just kind of fun. Somebody contacted me and they wanted to purchase. They asked about the issue that it derived from. And of course, I explained in an earlier video, although I don't put it in listings, I'm always free with that information. So they wanted to add it to a collection. They are a repeat customer, so this is going to somebody I've dealt with before. They paid $16.77 for this one. It's on its way to Pennsylvania. This might be the cutest ad of the week right here from National Geographic 1985. It says, Come talk to the animals. And it's an ad for SeaWorld, Florida. And I'm going to zoom in here because it's got the little girl here and she's giving Shamu a hug. And, there in later years, there was controversy surrounding the killer whale program at SeaWorld, and Shamu was beloved in the 1980s and 90s, and then after some training accidents and stuff like that, um, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they don't have the species of orca at SeaWorld anymore. But in the pictures, you also see let's see, that is a walrus right there. Uh, no, not a walrus, a sea lion. You've got a sea lion and you've got a seal, and they do still have a show at Orlando SeaWorld. It's Claude and Sebastian, I think, are the sea lion and the seal in that show. But anyway, just a cute ad, nice expressions, a lot of fun going on there at SeaWorld. I sold this because it's National Geographic, because it's a recent year. I only put $8.77 on it, even though it's a full page, full color. It's on its way to New York. This ended up to be my favorite sell of the week for an unexpected reason. But I'll go ahead and tell you about the ad itself first, and then I'll give you a little backstory. The product here is Woodbury Cold Cream. It's a cosmetic, and it was a 1942 ad that ran in Woman's Home Companion magazine. And when I got a message from a prospective buyer about this ad, they asked if they could see the back of the page. And I'll show you in just a moment that I provided that, and then we exchanged some information, and I learned something really cool. But to finish this out, 1942, Woman's Home Companion. And I did want to mention here that the celebrity is Brenda Joyce, and it says that she is part of a production by 20th Century Fox in a picture called Little Tokyo, USA. And of course, in World War II, 1942, just the title itself is going to draw a crowd because, a lot of Americans didn't know much about Japan or Tokyo other than what they had learned just a few months earlier at Pearl Harbor. So, anyway, pretty lady here. And I did want to mention also this upholstered, I guess it's a couch or a settee or some kind of a chair that she's sitting on. And in a recent video, I talked about a wallpaper ad with a button headboard on the bed like this. And I referred you all to a YouTube content creator who had made headboard of her own like this. Yeah, I'll post a link to that video so that you can go back and see that. But now, let me just go ahead and get it out of the way that I charged $14.77 for this half page ad. It's on its way to Virginia, and now I'll tell you the rest of the story. All right, what you're seeing on the left hand side of the screen is the picture of the back page of the half page Woodbury soap ad that I sent to him. And I also sent the picture on the right side of the screen, which is just that's me lifting up the corner of the ad so that he could see that what he's looking at on the back page is indeed printed on the back of the ad that's in the listing. So I wanted him to be 100% certain about that. He sent me back, said he wanted it. Yeah, it was like within 30 minutes. He snapped it up. He said that he had been looking for that picture for years that's on the back of the page. And that's because his uncle is one of the men in the picture, or well, there's two pictures. His uncle is one of those men. We didn't get into the details about which one, but his uncle was in the picture. Somebody saw the picture in the magazine, recognized him, clipped it out, and mailed it to him during the war, and he carried it with him. And it ended up that he got killed during the war. And when they sent his personal effects home, that picture was among his possessions. And so my customer, the nephew, came into possession of those things just in recent years, and he started the search to see if he could get another copy of that picture. And based on the clipping, his only clues was the Woodbury's soap ad and nothing else. He didn't have a magazine title, he didn't have a date or anything like that. He just knew it was during World War II and it was a Woodbury's ad. And so uh, he after he got the information from me, he bought the ad that I was selling immediately, and he asked for the magazine title and date. And he told me he was going to go shopping for that because he'd like to have the whole magazine as well. And I looked to there was I think three of them on eBay at the time, and one sold within a day or two of that. So I'm certain he might have been the one to pick that up. But anyway, he got the ad that he had been looking for years, and that gave him a tie to family. And I think that's part of what's really cool about what we do as sellers of this ephemera, whether it's advertising or old pictures or printed information, newspaper stories, any kind of ephemera where we can send that to a person who connects them more deeply with their family, with their relatives, with their community. I think it's a blessing to be a part of that process to help strengthen people's ties to who they are and where they came from. So just wanted to pass that story along. Now let's look at some more ads. Next up is an ad from 1976. The product is Victory Racing Plates. The company is based in Baltimore, Maryland, and what they sold was aluminum horseshoes. When you go into some of the detail here, besides aluminum racing plates, they also have a different one called a Victory Cushion that's made of pure white rubber and firmly bonded to a strong plate that does not spread. These cushion and absorb shock and help eliminate soreness and irritation. So something for the horse market here. And this ran in Classic Magazine. I sold it for $10.77. It's going to Washington. This ad from Reynolds Metal Company ran in Fortune Magazine, 1941, and it's a pledge to the USA. It talks about the vital defense of the country, and I'm going to zoom in here and just read the paragraph. It shows an eagle here, and the eagle is perched on what appears to be an aluminum aircraft wing and the internal substructures of the wing. So it's a nice illustration here, but in the paragraph, it says, no greater trust has ever been the responsibility of any generation than that of defending and preserving for posterity the right to live in the freedom of democracy which is ours today. We pledge the resources and facilities of the Reynolds Metals Company 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to supply strong aluminum alloys vital to the defense program. To the fulfillment of this obligation, every employee and executive of this company, individually and collectively, pledges his energy and unfaltering loyalty. As Americans, we cannot do less. As human beings, we cannot do more. This is our purpose and our pledge, and it's signed, I guess, by all of the board of directors of the company there. So a nice patriotic piece from the World War II era, and I sold it for $21.77. It's on its way to a buyer in Kentucky. Here's another interesting ad from 1958. This is an ad for Abercrombie and Fitch. They list themselves as the greatest sporting goods store in the world. And in the details of this ad, you can see here that this fellow with his bird dogs, he's out hunting ringneck pheasants. And it says, where the well blazed trail begins. And just as you read down through here, it talks about their sporting goods selection for hunters and outdoorsmen and all of that. So before Abercrombie and Fitch became the costume store for disillusioned teens, they actually were more of something like you'd see for Field and Stream or Dick's Sporting Goods or a store like that. So a little bit of interest in history there. This ad, like I said, ran in New Yorker, 1958. I sold it for $10.77. It's on its way to Georgia. This is the most visually interesting advertisement of the week, in my opinion, and it's a bicentennial scarf from the company called Hermes. It's a design house based in Paris, and it's a bicentennial state seals scarf with the map of the U.S. right there in the middle. We'll zoom in here and take a little bit closer look. Around the border, these are, I would be 99% certain, these are bows because it has the arrow points coming from the center and piercing the outer edge of those. So I would say it's like bows and arrows. But then in this red, you've got all of these golden state seals from all of the states of the United States. And so this is a tribute to all 50 states of the United States of America during its bicentennial year. This ran in Classic Magazine of 1976, of course, and $18.77 sent it to Illinois. From 1942, again, World War II era, this is an ad from Fortune magazine for the Michigan Molded Plastics company based in Dexter, Michigan. This is an ad that sold back to its hometown. It's a partial page ad, so I charged only $8.77. We'll zoom in here and look at the size, 5 inches by 7 inches. So $8.77 was the price. But in the detail here, I'm going to zoom this just like I did for the Reynolds Metals ad. This one sounds so very similar. It says the entire resources and facilities of Michigan Molded Plastics are completely mobilized and in action 24 hours a day, molding plastics to precision specifications for America's war-winning production, meeting the exacting requirements of the Army, Navy, and Air Forces. So again, company based in Dexter, Michigan, going back home, $8.77. This ad is for Old Taylor Bourbon Whiskey, and it also ran in Classic Magazine, 1976. And it goes into some detail here about old Colonel Taylor. His full name, Colonel Edmund H. Taylor Jr., says he was a tough son of a gun. In this story, it talks about how he busted all of his wooden stills because he wasn't satisfied with the quality. He wanted them all built back of copper. Copper was expensive, but damn the expense. And then over on the right, it says he even petitioned Congress to protect the quality of his booze. So, interesting ad here. I sold it for $16.77. It's on its way to Pennsylvania. On screen right now is an ad for the Copper Weld Steel Company based in Glassport, Pennsylvania. This apparently was a popular one. I had never heard of this company before. This is an ad that I tried to comp before I listed it, and I didn't see but maybe one other copper weld ad out there anywhere. So I priced it up at 23.77, and as you can see, before it sold, it had 9 views in the past 24 hours. That's a good number of views for any advertisement, at least in my store anyway. This ran in the Quartermaster Review 1943. In the detail, they just talk about how the company's business is saving copper, and they saved millions of pounds of copper during the first year of war, and they'll save millions more before, or it says millions more this year. But it talks about how their alloy can be used as power conductors, communication conductors, and how it has all kinds of special applications for the armed forces. This ad went to Tennessee for 23.77. On screen is an ad from Life magazine 1940. It's a half page in black and white. It features the actress Carol Landis. She was starring in a Hal Roach picture. Now, remember, Hal Roach did The Little Rascals and some other stuff, maybe Three Stooges, but from that 1930s era of the Little Rascals is where we know him best, Our Gang and stuff like that. So, anyway, in 1940, he made this picture called 1 Million BC. And in the details here, you see actress Carol Landis, and she's wearing animal skins and carrying a spear, and she's poking at this lizard, and there's a brontosaurus. And it says Brontosaurus, who lived 130 million years ago, and yet before he lived, nature was mellowing and filtering the crude oils used today in refining Sinclair motor oils. Oldest crudes expertly refined make Sinclair. So there you've got a lady driving and she's getting full service at the station with Sinclair motor oils. So nice ad there. I sold it for 14.77. It's on its way to Vermont. This is a cool ad from 1946, even though you're getting up into the decade and, in my opinion, kind of getting away from the Art Deco look. When I Googled this clock and found just a couple of examples of it, not many at all, but the ones that I did find describe this as an Art Deco style clock. So in the 40s, you still have some of that influence around. And this bar manufacturing company in Weedsport, New York, was still making a clock in this Art Deco case or cabinet, and it ran in Time Magazine 1946. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. In the pictures, you can't tell here, but you've got the plug in right there. So it's an electric clock, and it doesn't say anything about being lighted, but it certainly could be. But this case or cabinet on this clock is wood, and it's a beautifully grained dark wood. They had a couple of other models that had molded plastic cases, not this one though. But anyway, um, just a nice clock here. It says the Bar Fine family of clocks, and even that font down at the bottom, I feel like that's a kind of a Art Deco looking thing too. So anyway, beautiful ad. I couldn't find any other copies of bar clock advertising, but I marked this up by $2. Normally, this size, which is under 4 by 6, normally I would charge $6.77 for it. I put $8.77 on this, and that may have been too little. It didn't take long to sell, but again, $8.77. Time Magazine, 1946. It's going to New York. I'm going to look at this ad for Philadelphia cream cheese, and I'm going to what's the word, wax philosophic for just a minute and say the world is chaos, the world is complicated, it's hectic, there's a lot of worry, a lot of stress, but there's a few things in life that I can honestly say make me happy, and cream cheese is one of them. Cream cheese makes me happy. As a matter of fact, as I record this on Wednesday the 28th, I'll disclose my birthday was yesterday. And for my birthday, I made me a cheesecake. So that's how much I love cream cheese. It's really, really good stuff. This is a recipe that appeared in American Girl magazine 1952, and we'll zoom in on that because it's a never fail fudge that a girl can make in 15 minutes. It's got to chill for another 15 minutes and then it's ready to serve. But it says with a 3-ounce package of Philadelphia brand cream cheese, 2 cups of powdered sugar, 2 1-ounce squares of unsweetened chocolate melted, a quarter teaspoon of vanilla, dash of salt, and a half cup of chopped pecans. You can make your own recipe of never fail fudge. It sounds really good to me, and I copied this recipe before I mailed it out. I may give it a try one of these days. Anyway, $10.77 sent this to Wisconsin. The last ad of the week is this one from Coca-Cola. It's a World War II era ad, and it has soldiers on a South Pacific island. They're out in the jungle and they're carrying their guns. And this one is really cool. It's a Tommy gun here that he's carrying, a Thompson submachine gun. And then the other soldier looks like he may have a M1 Garand. But um, in this panel, it says, "Don't know what we'd do without Coke. It's good for the old morale." And down here, it just, talks a little bit more about Coca Cola. And then you've got not just one, but two of the Coca Cola Sprites, or if there's only one, he's in here twice. And I'm telling you, in my opinion, creepier than clowns. That demented expression on his face, and of course the weird bottle cap hat and the sparkly tie. Same thing up here. Um, you know, I think they could have done better. Put it that way. But anyway, it's interesting to see, and this is the only one like it that I saw. I think there was one in color, but this is the only one that was out there in black and white. I priced it up at $28.77. Again, it ran in Quartermaster Review magazine, 1943. It went to a collector in Missouri. So here we are at the weekly recap screen, and this is the 35th week of 2024, and I sold 18 ads for $261.86. And what else we see on the screen pertains to that change that I mentioned when we got started. This is what I'd like your feedback about, because we've scrapped the typical discussion that we usually do about the different elements of the ads that we sell, as far as like the cities and global shipping and repeat customers. And what I've put on this slide, or visual, is the titles of magazines that generated these sales. And you can see here that for the 18 ads sold, they came from 11 different publications. And so my very first impression as I look at this, these titles that generated more than one sale are all titles that I've listed not in recent months, but in recent weeks. Classic Magazine, Fortune, Quartermaster Review, and Woman's Home Companion. I've listed ads from all four of those publications within the last 2 months. There's a bunch on this list, I think at least five on the list, that I've not listed ads from in 6 months or more. Not because they're not good publications, but you know, as I sit here and work with these ads and I process the magazines and I create the listings, I want to look at different stuff sometimes. And so I love the magazine Argosy, but I looked at several and then I wanted to move on. New Yorker, I listed from at least three and decided I wanted to do something different. American Girl, same thing. And National Geographic, all of those are titles that I've not listed anything from in 6 or 8 months. And they've all generated very good sales. It's just that I was ready to work with something else for a while. So that's my impression about the titles that we see here. Pretty much any magazine that I break down and process and list ads from are going to have good ads that are going to sell. So that's the main takeaway I think from this. We'll try this at least another couple of weeks, I think, to get an analysis of magazine titles. And if you give me feedback and you like this and you want to keep doing this for a while, we may do it for 6 or 8 weeks, or we could do it for 6 or 8 months, depending on what y'all tell me you like to see. But that's the analysis of the magazine breakdown for the week. Now we're going to dive back into last week's topic of struggling with categories. To clarify, I'm not talking about eBay product categories. I'm talking about store categories. Categories if you have a store subscription that you set up yourself to organize what it is that you have up for sale. I'll be discussing here the four major mistakes that I made as I was getting started. And hopefully, if you're just getting started, or maybe if you've not started yet, maybe you can learn something from this that's going to save you a lot of work in the long run. So let's talk about that first mistake now. So when I got started, I knew what a store category was, but I didn't know why it was important. And now that I do, I understand that it was important enough to make a plan. I know that now. I didn't make a plan then, and all of this that follows that I'm going to show you kind of stems from that first failure, not making a plan. So, mistake number one, major mistake, I didn't have a plan. Now, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to show you examples of all four of these mistakes. And this first one, the failure to plan, I'm going to demonstrate to you right here in my store what the result of that is. What you're looking at right here is the front door of the store. And when I select store categories, it's opened that up down there. And I'm going to, well, it should have opened it up down there. There it is. And so now it's showing all categories, but to see them all, you got to show more. So let's slide back up to the top here. And the very first category is advertising. Now, that's not print advertising. That is advertising for advertising agencies. Just to clarify, I don't have a print advertisement main category because everything in the store is supposed to be print advertising with a couple of exceptions. But anyway, so here we are. Looks like we got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 11 categories per page. And instead of sliding back down, I'm just going to go by page. So there should be roughly 11 more, 22, 33, roughly, 44, 55, 66, and from Tabaciana, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So, well, it seems like it's roughly 73. It's actually 76 different categories that I have in the store. That is a lot of well, let me rephrase that. That is too many categories. And I'm going to show you how you know it's too many categories. I've added some, and I'll get into some detail about the reason here in just a little bit. But first of all, let's look at this one right here. Automobiles, cars, and trucks. You hit that little arrow and you get subcategories. I've got 23 subcategories in there. I started doing that after I was about 2,000 listings in. I was that far along in the store before I even discovered subcategories. So I had to create the automobiles, cars, and trucks category to try to fix the mistake that I made when I established the cars and trucks category when I started. Let's look at this cars and trucks. I'm going to expand on that and show you I've got all of these cars and trucks in here. There's Toyotas. Up here is a Chevy Monte Carlo. Down here, I've got a Packard. Here's a Jeep. There's a Lincoln, so on and so forth. All of those are in cars and trucks. But under automobiles, when I started trying to fix this, I established categories. Let me rephrase that. Subcategories for Chevrolet. For, well, I showed you the Toyota. I got Asian makes of cars, which would include Toyota. I showed you a Jeep. I've got a Jeep subcategory. I showed you a Packard. I've got a Packard subcategory. I established the automobiles, cars, and trucks category much later, and then I added subcategories that I had the intention of moving every car and truck ad into so that I could eventually remove the cars and trucks category. That way I don't have to. If somebody arrived in my store looking for automobile ads, they would find automobiles and its subcategories. If they didn't see what they wanted there, why would they go and look for a cars and trucks category? So that is just one symptom of my failure to plan. I could go on and on, but let's go back and look at mistake number 2. Here's mistake number 2. I should have benchmarked because I made mistake number 1 because I did not plan. Then I needed to at least adopt or modify somebody else's plan. I needed to find somebody that was doing it right and maybe not copy it exactly, but I needed to see and understand the logic that someone else utilized in setting up a store to set mine up. Instead of doing that, I was proceeding without a plan, and I would get to a car ad and say, okay, I need a car category. And I would go in and add a car category. I would get to, uh, let's say, an Oscar Mayer ad, and I would say, okay, this is food. I need a food category, and I would add it. And the same for travel. Uh, Delta Airlines. I would say, okay, I need a travel and tourism category. And so that's how I built the categories in my store one at a time with no plan. And after I got, 50, 60, 70 categories in, I was thinking, this is a mess. I need to fix it. I'll talk about that in just a moment. But before I leave this category before I leave this number 2 about failure to benchmark, I'm going to take a look and show you a store for Bell postcards where he does it right. So let's look at that briefly. So here we are at Bell Postcards. It's a beautiful storefront. And of course, the categories tab is over on the left hand side of the page. Let's hit that. Now, it's glorious that when you hit categories, you see 3 things. Of course, he started out as a postcard seller, so you've got regular postcards. He added a category for continental size postcards, a little bit bigger postcard if you don't know the postcard market. But anyway, a few months ago, he decided to add an aspect to his store and start selling some print ads. So here you go. He added the print ad category. That's the sweetest thing, to go to a storefront, hit categories, and have 3 simple choices. Now, when you hit print ads and look at the print ads available, here is the drop down menu for print ads. And I'm going to count these here. Basically 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, roughly 14 on the page. We can double that roughly and say 28. And then I don't think there's room to double it again. So Let's look at store retail ads, say 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. 34. So where I've got more than double the number of print ad categories to look at, you can go into Jock's store here and you can see that, when you choose print ads, you've got 20, what I say, 38 categories to shop. And so, uh, you know, he may not be done. He may realize that he needs to add something or empty something out and take it away, because he's only a few months into this. But what a great experience to arrive here and have these simple choices. And I would, as a shopper, much rather shop in Jacques' store than in my own. And because I love what I do, and because I really am trying my best, I have to say that with admiration, he's got one of the best stores that I've seen. And, you know, by the way, I've got his permission to talk about his stuff, and he didn't ask me to at all. But he knows that um, in order to demonstrate some of these things, it helps to have a comparison to look at. And so he's given me permission to do that. And I'm very thankful. And by the way, if you are starting out, if you're new to print ad selling, if you're establishing your store, or early on, if you want to find an example and maybe correct some mistakes, it's worth your time. Every hour that you spend in here will benefit you. So come and visit Bell Postcards and take a look at what Jacques doing. Now we'll move on to mistake number 3. Here we are at mistake number 3, and mistake number 3 is that I didn't make corrections. What I did instead is I tried to make changes. I saw things going off the rail, and I thought some changes might guide things back onto the rails. But since we're on the topic of magazines always here, I'll give you an anecdote from a magazine. This is what I'm thinking in my head. Um, in Outdoor Life magazine, the very last story in every issue back when I was young was called The Last Laugh, and the author of those was a comedy writer. He wrote, humorous stories. His name was Pat McManus. He always told his stories in the first person, and he had a sidekick that appeared in most stories named Wretch Sweeney. And he had this saying about Wretch Sweeney. Wretch was always prepared to compound a catastrophe. And in my opinion, making changes instead of corrections compounded the catastrophe. And like I said, I'm exaggerating a little bit. It's not a debacle, but it got worse instead of better because I didn't try to stop and fix it, 4, 5, 6 months in to the life of the store. So I'll pause right here. We'll go back to my store and I'll give you some examples of that. I think the best thing to do here to show you how it was a mistake to make changes instead of corrections here is because I initiated a process without follow through. I initiated it without a sure concept that it was going to get me back on the right track anyway. So let's go down here to food, for example, and I'm going to talk to you about my food category. Right here, I've got food and drink, but then I noticed that there was just going to be gobs and gobs of all kinds of stuff that were put into the food and drink category. So, food and drink, I had every kind of food, and then every type of non alcoholic drink was also in there. And I thought, okay, that's going to be a mess. So, I established a separate food category and with subcategories. This food category called food, candy, and ingredients. The subcategories are additives, flavorings, and spice, and then candy, confections, and desserts, cereals, grains, bread, and pasta, fruits, meats, packaged entrees and dinners, and veggies. This is still incomplete. I don't have soups in here. And because I didn't set that up, I am still adding to the erroneous category that I'm trying to empty out. When you look at food and drink, here's mustard that would go in flavoring, spices, and ingredients. Um, you've got the biscuit company, which is actually probably cookies that needs to go in the breads, grains category, mounds in the candies, and so on and so forth. But this is where all of my Campbell's soup ads end up, and a bunch of other things. Here is Campbell's soup right here. So I continue to put this in a category I don't want it in because the change I made is an incomplete change, not a real correction. So I'll go on and talk about drinks now. Let me collapse that and go back up and look at drinks. I've got non alcoholic drinks here. When you expand that category, I've got coffee and tea separate, which I think was a mistake in hindsight because many, maybe most coffee companies also sold tea and vice versa. Then I've got fruit juices, which leaves out a whole category of vegetable drinks. And then I've got drink mixes like Quick and Ovaltine and some health mixes and stuff like that. Then I've got soda pop and colas, which I don't have a category for non-alcoholic mixers for like tonic water and club soda and the other things that you would use in mixed drinks or making cocktails. So that's yet incomplete also. And those are just a couple of examples of how I made changes that are not true corrections. And that's mistake number 3. Now let's go on and look at mistake number 4. So on screen right now, you see mistake number 4. That mistake is I didn't not procrastinate, which if you're a fan of the double negative in the English language like I am, then you know that actually translates to I did procrastinate. But saying it that way kind of takes a little bit of the sting out of it. But I don't like the fact that I choose to procrastinate sometimes, and it's definitely been a choice to procrastinate with corrections here. And that's because once I put some of those changes in place, I thought, okay, now that I've added a change to guide things back to the rails, then what's going to happen is I'm going to sell some items from these miscategorized places and empty them out a little bit. And then when I get around to actually moving things in a serious way, there'll be less of it to move. However, that's not the case. As I told you, because I made some changes and not true corrections, it's worse now than it was because I keep adding to the miscategorized things that I intend to move in the future anyway. Let's take a look at that kind of thing in my store. Now, as we round out the topic of mistake number 4, which is procrastination, let's go into the Seller Hub and look at store categories from that perspective. And I'll show you, I didn't get what I wanted. Store categories. Let's go down here and we'll take a look at the same things that we were just talking about a minute ago. We'll look at food and drink. Now, in the first several months of having the store established, I put way more than 400 items into food and drink, and I realized then that it was becoming a behemoth, and that if somebody went in there to find something specific, they would likely give up before they browsed 400 or 500 ads. And so, with the intent to fix it, I made a change instead of a correction. Um, I put food in its own category, and I gave it 7 subcategories. Still needs a couple more. I put drinks in its own category. I gave it 5 subcategories. It needs at least 2 more. But anyway, because I didn't think it through and because it wasn't corrected, the changes that I made have compounded the catastrophe. An example of that, in these food categories, you can see here I've got additives, candies, cereals and grains, fruits, meats, packaged entrees, and vegetables. What I don't have here is I don't have soup. All of Campbell's soup is still going up in food and drink. Every other kind of soup and several other foods that I run across, I'm thinking they don't fit in the new food category with its 7 subcategories, so it's getting thrown in food and drink. The same is true with stuff like V8 juice. It's a vegetable drink. It don't go in fruit juices, but that's the closest thing because I don't have a vegetable drink category for some of these health drinks and other things that are vegetable. Also, because non-alcoholic mixers like tonic water and club soda and whatever else folks might mix their drinks with, um, Perrier and things like that. I don't have a category for those, so they are still winding up in food and drink. This is a category that I want to get rid of. I would like to empty it out and get rid of it, and that way drinks are in drinks and food is in food, and never the twain shall meet. But I've not made it happen, and because I just made changes without fixing it, the corrections that were needed have become worse problems. So that needs some attention, all because I procrastinated. So now I'm going to mention a couple of honorable mentions in the way of category mistakes. So we've talked about all 4 of the mistakes that I intended to getting started. There are a couple of honorable mentions. I will call them mistake number 5 and 6, and that is having store categories that are overly broad and they end up getting filled up with hundreds of ads that are hard to browse. And then number 6 is having store categories that are overly narrow. I'll show you an example of that as well. In an overly broad category, right here, I've got health and beauty. That's a lot. I need a health category with subcategories, and I need a beauty category with subcategories. For beauty, that could be everything from makeup to cosmetology products, hair care, and all of that. Also, nail polish and perfumes could all go in there in those subcategories. For the health, you've got prescription medicine, you've got pain medication, you've got stuff for upset stomach and other gastrointestinal issues that we won't go into. Um, Things to help you breathe better, to see better, maybe eyeglasses and hearing aids category, and all of that. To unclutter that would be a major undertaking now. That's why I say plan early and plan well and benchmark and look at what other sellers that did this right are doing, and get you some ideas from there. Another category, I know I'm taking a lot of your time, but let's look at clothing real quick up here at the top of the page. 468 categories there for clothing and fashion, and that could be split up in subcategories, everything from undergarments to outerwear, hats, shoes, purses, gloves, wallets and belts, and all that kind of stuff. Men's and women's, some sellers have it broken down: men's, women's, children, infants, so on. you know there's better ways to do this. That's why I wish I'd have had a plan 20 months ago. And finally, under the heading of honorable mention mistakes is categories that are too narrow. And I've got household cleaners here, and there's 127 in that. That's fine. That makes sense. But right next to it is cleaning supplies for automobiles, and there's only 8 listings in that. I'm talking about things like Armor All and Tire Shine, Turtle Wax, McGuire's car care products, and those kinds of things. There are 8 of them. There's no reason at all why I couldn't go up here to cars and trucks, parts and tires, and just change that category heading to auto care and moving these 8 listings into that. That would tidy it up just a little bit. That would take one of the 76 categories out of play. And if I do that 2, 3, 4, 5 times, then I'm making progress. So that's something that I'll be looking at doing in the future. And I don't say that with any intent to procrastinate, but I think I've done let the cat out of the bag that I just might. So now that we've covered those 2 extra mistakes, 5 and 6, let's jump back and wrap up 1 through 4. On the way out the door this week, I've put this back on the screen so we can take another look at the 4 major mistakes that I made. If you're a seller and you're established and you're at the point in your selling career or in the life of your store where you've already made some of these same mistakes, then take heart, because eBay understands that there's sellers like me who are going to mess it up. That's why I believe that's why they added a search within store search bar that shoppers that show up, they can look at my category list and say, yeah, and go to the search bar and just try to find the specific thing that they're looking for. They might have fun browsing the categories, but as far as a shopper that's serious about looking for something, then that search bar search within Blue Feather Ephemera is going to be their most useful tool in my store. And I hope to get it to a point that that's not the case, but that's the reality for now. So if you have some of these issues, fix what you can, pray about the rest, and in the meantime, just enjoy the ride. So I hope you come back and see me next week. We'll talk about something else. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like it, there's several ways to support the channel. Hit the like button. Also, share this with friends and subscribe to the channel. That way you'll be notified when new videos drop. And then also, leave a comment if you have questions or suggestions or just want to send a friendly hello. I'd love to hear from you.